Hey everyone, my name is Christy, and I'm filming my first video across the Ohio River from my hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. I am in Clarksville, Indiana right now. This is one of my favorite places to hang out. I do a lot of reading up here, so I thought it would be fun to come up here and film my first video. It's hard to believe it's December 30th. I'm sitting outside in short sleeves, kind of enjoying it. It's a little bit breezy and cool, but the temperature in my car, the thermometer in my car, I should say, reads 68 degrees. I'm sure it would feel a little warmer if the sun were out, but after last weekend and the 3 to 5 inches of snow and negative 35 wind chill factor, I'll take a little breeze with 68 degrees. So the video that I'm filming today is for my TBR for January. I probably should go ahead and apologize for any noise that you hear in the background. I just could not resist being outside today, so I'm going to ask you all to deal with a little bit of noise. So the first book that I'm going to show you all that is on my TBR is The Orphans Tale by Pam Jenoff. I've already started this book, and I'm really enjoying it so far. My favorite genre is historical fiction. I'm going to have a little something to show you all here in a little bit that has to do with that, but I specifically enjoy World War II historical fiction, and that is the setting for this story. Here's a little synopsis of what's getting ready to happen. 16-year-old Noah has been cast out in disgrace after becoming pregnant by a Nazi soldier and being forced to give up her baby. She lives above a small rail station, which she cleans in order to earn her keep. But when Noah discovers a boxcar containing dozens of Jewish infants bound for a concentration camp, she is reminded of the child that is taken from her. And in a moment that will change the course of her life, she snatches one of the babies and flees into the snowy night. Noah finds refuge with a German circus, but she must learn the flying trapeze act so she can blend in undetected, spurning the resentment of the lead aerialist, Astra. At first rivals, Noah and Astrid soon forge a powerful bond, but as the facade that protects them proves increasingly tenuous, Noah and Astrid must decide whether their friendship is enough to save one another, or if the secrets that burn between them will destroy everything. I'm completely intrigued, and so far, with what I've read, sold. The next book that is on my TBR will be, I just said TBR. The next book that's on my TBR will be familiar to some of you. It is Old Country. This is the Pyramid Book Club's choice for the month of January. Looking forward to reading this one. So some of you, if you're watching, will know the synopsis of this story, but for those of you who don't, it's the house of their dreams. Former Marine Harry and his wife Sasha have packed up their life and their golden retriever Dash and fled the corporate rat race to live off the land in rural Idaho. Their breathtaking new home sits on more than 40 acres of meadow, aspen trees, and pine forest in the Teton Valley. Even if their friends and family think it's a strange choice for an up-and-coming pair of urban professionals, Harry and Sasha couldn't be happier about the future they're building all by their lonesome. That is, until their nearest neighbors, Dan and Lucy Steiner, become bearing more than housewarming gifts. Dan and Lucy warn Harry and Sasha of a malevolent spirit that lives in the valley, one that with every season will haunt them in a fresh, ever more diabolical way. At first it seems like an old wives' tale, but when spring arrives, so does the first evil manifestation, challenging everything that Harry and Sasha thought they knew about the world. As each season passes, the spirit grows stronger, the land more sinister, and each encounter more dangerous. Will Harry and Sasha learn the true meaning of forever home before it's too late? Haunting and bone-chilling, Old Country is a spellbinding debut in the horror genre. I had no idea this was a debut novel, so I really hope that it scares my pants off. Y'all don't need to see anything. The next book that's on my TBR for January is Once Upon a River This is by Diane Setterfield. I read one of her books, The 13th Tale, not too long ago. It is a gothic tale that quickly became one of my favorite books, and it has held on to one of the top at least 5 spots for many, many years. So I'm looking forward to reading this book. Here's a peek into what it is about. On a dark midwinter's night in an ancient inn on the River Thames, an extraordinary event takes place. The regulars are telling stories to while away the dark hours when the door bursts open on a grievously wounded stranger. In his arms is the body of a small child. Hours later, the girl stirs, takes a breath, and returns to life. Is it a miracle? Is it magic? Or can science provide an explanation? These questions have many answers, and some of them are quite dark indeed. Those who dwell on the riverbank apply all their ingenuity to solving the puzzle of the girl who died and lived again. Yet as the days pass, the mystery only deepens. The child herself is mute and unable to answer the essential questions. Who is she? Where did she come from? And to whom does she belong? Inquiring minds want to know. The next book that I have on my TBR is The Witches of Moonshine Manor. This book was not on my radar for a very long time, and I started hearing about it probably midway through 2002, and I started hearing a lot about it. So I added it to my TBR so that I could find out what the hype is all about. So this comes to me pretty well hyped, and I am hoping that it's going to be worth the hype. Here's kind of a basic synopsis of what it's about. 5 octogenarian witches gather as an angry mob threatens to demolish Moonshine Manor. All eyes turn to the witch in charge. Queenie, who confesses they've fallen far behind on their mortgage payments. Still, there's hope. Since the imminent return of Ruby, one of the sisterhood who's been gone for 33 years, will surely be their salvation. But the mob is only the start of the problems. One man is hell-bent on avenging his family for the theft of a legacy he claims was rightfully his. In an act of desperation, Queenie makes a bargain with an evil far more powerful than anything they've ever faced. Then things take a turn for the worse when Ruby's homecoming reveals a seemingly insurmountable obstacle instead of the solution to all their problems. The witches are determined to save their home and themselves, but their aging powers are no match for increasingly malicious threats. Thankfully, they get a bit of help from Persephone, a feisty TikToker eager to smash the patriarchy. Power to the people. As the deadline to save the manor approaches, fractures among the sisterhood are revealed and long-held secrets are exposed, culminating in a fiery confrontation with their enemies. Sounds like a good time. The next book on my TBR is Beartown by Frederick Backman. I have been looking for a book that's been set in winter, and this is that book. It also has a picture of some hockey players on the cover. I'm kind of a not really closeted hockey fan. I love the Nashville Predators. Started watching hockey 15 years or so ago with an ex-boyfriend who was a hockey fan. The ex-boyfriend is still an ex-boyfriend. I'm still a hockey fan. So at least he gave me something good that I really enjoy. I digress. Here's what the book is about. People say Beartown is finished. A tiny community nestled deep in the forest, it is slowly losing ground to the ever-encroaching trees. But down by the lake stands an old ice rink, built generations ago by the working men who founded this town. And that ice rink is the reason people in Beartown believe tomorrow will be better than today. Their junior ice hockey team is about to compete in the national semifinals, and they actually have a shot at winning. All the hopes and dreams of this place now rest on the shoulders of a handful of teenage boys. A victory would send star player Kevin to the brilliant professional future in the NHL. It would mean everything to Amat, a scrawny 15-year-old treated like an outcast everywhere but on the ice. And it would justify the choice that Peter, the team's general manager, and his wife Kira made to return to his hometown and raise their children in this beautiful but isolated place. Being responsible for the hopes of an entire town is a heavy burden, and a semi-final match is the catalyst for a violent act that will leave a young girl traumatized and a town in turmoil. Hers is a story that no one wants to believe, since doing so would mean the end of the dream. Accusations are made, and like ripples in a pond, they travel through all of Beartown, leaving no resident unaffected. This is what I was referring to when I said I had a piece of World War II history to show you here at Waterfront Park. This is obviously Rosie the Riveter, and she is a symbol of how women were very helpful in the cause while our men were off at war. Meet Hugo, the laziest of cats. He is sitting in my spot, and he obviously does not care. Two of my goals for 2023 are to, number one, work on trimming down my TBR. It's got over 700 books on it. It's out of hand. So I've got to get that under control. The second one is to make headway on several series. I've got several series that I have not completed. So in 2022, I read several first books in series, and I'm going to spend January hopefully getting to some of the books that are the second books in these series. One of the books that I read was One of Us is Lying, so the second book in that series is One of Us is Next. In the first book, I'm not going to talk about the second book. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the first book. Not necessarily, I was going to say that I was going to tell you what happened, but no, I'm really not. In the first book, 5 teenagers are put in detention. One of them dies while in detention, and of course the other 4 are suspects. So the book is spent hashing out whodunit. In this book, we figured out who did it in the first book. This book is about a copycat gossip app that these apps have popped out since Simon died. And this is the next year. In this book, no one has the facts. This time, it's a game, not an app. It's truth or dare. So they have 3 different targets, I think. And since the person who wrote the apps in the first book is dead, we now have another person who's popped up and is causing chaos among the students at Bayview High. So that's what this book is about. The next book is Finley Donovan Knocks Him Dead. The first book in this series was Finley Donovan is Killing It. She had a conversation with someone, was overheard. The person who overheard her thought she was a serial killer and chose to hire her to do a job. So in the second book, it's kind of a continuation of that. Finley is struggling to finish her next novel and to keep her head above ground as a single mother of 2. She has a live-in nanny and a confidant to rely on, and the only dead body she's dealt with lately is that of her daughter's goldfish. On the not-so-bright side, someone out there wants her ex-husband, Stephen, permanently out of the picture. So whatever else Stephen may be, he is a good father, but saving him will send her down a rabbit hole of soccer moms disguised as hit women, and will involve her a little bit more with the Russian mob than she'd like. I think any involvement with the Russian mob is a little more than I would like. So meanwhile, her nanny Vera is keeping secrets, and Detective Nick Anthony seems determined to get back into her life. He may be a hot cop, but Finley's first priority is preventing her family from sleeping with the fishes. And if that means bending a few laws, then so be it. I thought the first book was quite funny. I enjoyed it. I'm expecting nothing less out of this book. So we'll see what happens. I was recently introduced to Nevermore, which is a series of stories about Morgan Crow. Alexandra Roseland introduced me to the first book, and some of y'all may be familiar with her channel. So I read the first book in the Nevermore series last month, and this month I'm going to be reading Wondersmith, The Calling of Morgan Crow. I really enjoyed the first book. I do love middle grades books, and I think sometimes the storytelling is really good. I'm a fool for a good story. This is the case for the Morgan Crow books, as far as I know. So I'm really interested in finding out what happens here in the second book. Morgan Crow has defeated her deadly curse. She has passed 4 trials, and she has joined the mystical and prestigious Wondrous Society, but her journey has only just begun. So she is, in this story, going to spend her second year working with the Wondrous Society, and she has to prove her innocence because she is kind of the number one suspect when a lot of people go missing. So we'll see what Morgan has to do to get herself out of the sticky situation that she's finding herself in. The next story I'm going to read is also a middle grade. It is Rick Riordan. It's the Heroes of Olympus story, and this one is the Son of Neptune. I read The Lost Hero last month, just recently finished up. I really enjoyed Percy Jackson. I love Greek mythology. So reading the Heroes of Olympus is going to be right up my alley. And the last book I have to share with you all is Stephen King, Finders Keepers. This is another book that I recently read. The first book in it's Mr. Mercedes. It is about a mass murder that takes place, and so the last book I'm going to read is Stephen King's Finders Keepers. I recently read Mr. Mercedes, which was the first book in this series, and I don't believe that the books are noisy again, flight path, and it doesn't help that we have a UPS hub here. Airplanes are constantly landing at our airport. So anyway, I don't think these books in this series necessarily build off of each other, but they are based on some of the same characters. I really enjoyed Mr. Mercedes, and here is a synopsis of the story. Wake up, genius. So begins King's instantly riveting story about a vengeful reader. The genius is John Rothstein, an iconic author who created a famously beloved character, Jimmy Gold, but who hasn't published for decades. Morris Bellamy is livid, not just because Rothstein has stopped providing books, but because the nonconformist Jimmy Gold sold out for a career in advertising. Morris kills Rothstein and empties his safe of cash. Yes, but the real treasure is a trove of notebooks containing at least one more Gold novel. Morris hides the money in the notebooks, and then he is locked away in a high-security prison for a different crime. Decades later, a young teen named Pete Saubers, whose father was injured in the Mr. Mercedes killings, finds the treasure, and now it is Pete and his family whom Bill Hodges, Holly Gibney, and Jerome Robinson must rescue from their ever more deranged and vengeful Morris when he is released from prison after 35 years and wants his money and his notebooks back. When I read the first book, Holly Gibney became one of my favorite characters ever, so I can't wait to continue and see what role she plays in this book. Now that you've seen my first video, I hope that you will like the video and subscribe. I plan on putting out weekly content, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks!